too hot in Dubai for the summer. So I'm in Spain, keeping cool.
Nice, man. Yeah, I went to Dubai in 2021. I think it was July, and I get out the airport. Man. Dude, I walked out the airport. I thought there was a fire behind me. I kid you not. It was so freaking hot. How do you do it?
Well, that's why I'm in Spain. I mean, we normally leave Dubai probably the middle of May, end of April, middle of May. But this year, I just had a new baby about 12 weeks ago.
I saw that.
Congrats. Thank you very much. And she didn't have a passport until, I think she got a passport something like the fucking 12th of June. So we've been waiting for it to come, and we got the passport literally 3 days later on the plane and out there. It's the hottest it's been. I mean, it's like fucking nuts.
Let me ask you this. What's your favorite thing about Dubai?
You know what? I feel like I do the PR for Dubai. I think for me, just to backtrack the conversation, I went there by accident. I'd never been there before. I'd always heard good things about it, but I went on a holiday, an 8-day holiday in COVID, and never came back just because, the 8 days, well, I would have flown back into lockdown. So I was like, fuck it, 8 days, I may as well do a week, may as well do a month, 2 months. And then I just kind of stayed there, met a girl, and bought a house, and really never came back. I mean, all my business is still in the UK. My staff and everything are there, and I just kind of work remotely. But what do I like about it? I mean, look, other than the obvious tax-free and sun, I mean, the opportunity there is immense. Whether you're a personal trainer, a massage therapist, or a CEO or an investor, the opportunity is enormous. The caliber of people there. I mean, you're talking. I mean, multimillionaires by the bucket load. Then billionaires and CEOs and inspiring people. It's clean, it's safe. There's everything. I mean, I'm a bit of a lazy guy as well when it comes to getting shit done. There's an app for everything. I can sit at home and work all day. Press a button and cinnamon arrives. Press a button and the fucking shopping arrives. I mean, you never go to the supermarket. You don't. Everything just runs on an app. So, with a lot of reasons, but I love the place.
Yeah, Dubai is really cool. And the man-made island they got over there. I think I stayed at the Jumeirah Palm, I think it was called.
Yeah.
One of the newer resorts over there, and it was immaculate. It was incredible. It was a time of my life, man. And I wanna thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hop on the podcast today. A little bit about the podcast. Yeah, man. This is the Live Better Now podcast. On this podcast, we talk about personal growth, self-development, health and wellness, how we can be better people for ourselves, for our partners, for our family, and for the world. And I wanted to get you on the podcast because you got a really interesting story. It's I want to call it a comeback story, right? Rose to the top, fell to the bottom, right? 2008 was a really tough year for a lot of people. And, the credit crunch really hit you harder than most. It hit you harder than other people because you were so over-levered and, you just had a lot of things spread out too thin and whatnot. But, you kept the grit, had a lot of perseverance. You knew what you wanted. You were clear on your values. You have extremely great work ethic. I've been watching a lot of your YouTube videos and had a great conversation with Carl Moon. That was pretty interesting. I saw that one. That was really cool. Yeah. And I just super, super interesting guy. And I like having conversations with interesting people on the podcast. So I want to thank you again for taking the time to have this conversation with me today.
Anytime, buddy, anytime. I love these chats. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So let's start from the beginning. So grew up and started acquiring bars, and is that how that all started?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a bit of other stuff in the meantime in there. I mean, look, I if I rewind to probably 9 years old, 10 years old, I mean, that's when I kind of knew that I wanted a career in business, knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Without giving my age away, that was long before the time when it was kind of cool and sexy to be an entrepreneur. I just wanted to be a business owner because, quite frankly, I just wanted to be rich. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was pretty much perceived that the only way to make big money was to own your own business. My old man, he had his own business as well, so I guess some of that entrepreneurialism from him is obviously rubbed off on me. And I spent my teenage years, reading every book, reading every magazine I could get my hands on to do with business. I'd be buying and selling stuff in the markets. I'd be I was trying to squat on domain names in the beginning of the .com. I mean, I'd do anything I could because I was just gagging to be rich, really.
Sorry to interject, but it was your friend who bought spicegirls.com that opened your eyes to this domain real estate?
So it was a friend, well, kind of a friend of a friend, but I didn't know the guy, and he bought spicegirls.com. I mean, this is showing how long ago this is now, because I mean, that whole concept is just inconceivable.
This was like mid-90s, like 95, 96.
Yeah, 95, 96, and he bought spicegirls.com. And what he did with it originally was he like rented space on there, so you could have had Zach at spicegirls.com as an email address, and I don't know, whatever you pay, $10 a month or something, and then ultimately he sold it for a six-figure sum to the management team. So I thought, wow, what a great idea, but also, I mean, back then nobody had taken any names because people still just hadn't really got their head around it, and it wasn't like I was some visionary. I just kind of saw this idea, copied it, and I was a big Natalie Imbruglia fan at the time, half because I liked the music and half because I wanted to shag her. So I'm thinking, I googled natalieinbruglia.com, and that was available. Natalie-imbruglia.com was available, and .co.uk. So I've paid my £100, whatever it was, to buy them all. I thought, happy days. I'm going to be able to do the same as the Spice Girls guy did. I'm going to be able to make a load of money by selling it to her management team, but that's also going to mean that I'm going to get to meet Natalie as well, and I can use all the money I've made from her management team to spend on her and run off together into the sunset. Unfortunately, her management team initially couldn't get their head around what I was offering. Then they decided I was blackmailing them. I wanted nothing to do with it, and I ended up selling it to a fellow fan/stalker for about, I forget what, £500, £1,000, but more than I bought it for anyway. So technically, I made a profit, but unfortunately, I never got to meet Natalie.
Now, what did you learn from that?
What did I?
You were a teenager at the time, right? You were like 15, 16 years old. So what did you learn from that?
I've never been asked that question before on that specific thing. I mean, what did I learn from that? I guess if you've only got one potential person to sell something to, your options are pretty limited. Which is, I guess, why in my head I was going to get $100,000 and really got about £500. But it's funny you said, because turning that onto its inverse, I actually do talk about that a lot now, in terms of negotiation or sales or anything it is you want to do. That I always say that the money's made in the beginning, and the money's made by the effort that you put in on day one to have a big enough pipeline on anything. And one of my YouTube videos, I tell the story about where I bought my apartment in Dubai. I think I paid £1.5 million for a place that was worth $4 million. And I did the same thing. I have a boat where I paid 40% of what this boat was worth. And people will say to me, "Oh my God, you're such an amazing negotiator." I say, I don't think I am. Like, I don't have this clever pattern and ways to like mind fuck people into giving me what they want. I simply decide what I want and put the effort in at the beginning to find enough people who could possibly sell it to me. So when I wanted my apartment, I found multiple apartments that I was happy with. I wasn't emotionally attached. When I found the boat I wanted, I went and offered on 15 different. It was the same boat. Like the same model, but I offered 15 different people who were selling it half the price that they were asking for. Now, you know what? Every one of them could have told me to piss off, but if I'm asking 15 people for something, there's more chance of me getting a yes or a maybe from 15 than there is of one. And that's my strategy pretty much across the board, really. And it's my advice to anyone else. Whether you're in sales or whether you're in purchasing, there's always somebody who's prepared to do what you want. But ultimately, you can't make someone do something they don't want to do. But you just have to find enough people who could be in the game.
So simple. Instead of negotiating against one person, have that one person negotiate against other people, and that just drives the price down.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, I don't know if I don't want to sell you these iPods for £200, then I'm never going to sell you these AirPods for £200. And you can harass me and you can bother me and you can tell me all the stuff in the world. But if I can afford or don't want to sell them for whatever reason, then you're never buying them. And all you can do about it, rather than being disappointed, is go and find somebody else who is. And I think people just aren't prepared to put enough effort in at the beginning of the game.
Right. Okay. So now after this experience selling this domain name, you were in your late teens, right? You loved drinking and you loved women. So let's start a business around that, right? Was that the idea?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the previous 3 years I'd been working in a family business. It was a business making uniforms for security guards and bus drivers. It was a failing business, a business that my dad had invested in. That after many weeks of me coming home from work and kind of slamming my hands on the table at dinner, saying, "Dad, they're screwing you in this business. Please come into work and do something about it." And he kind of turned around and said, "Look, I'm retired now. I just can't be bothered." He goes, "I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just can't be bothered." So he said, "Look, you go in there, do what you want with it. You can't make it any worse than they already have." And I went in the next day and I basically fired everybody. Started from scratch in a business I didn't really know anything about either. And I always say that it wasn't that I knew what I was doing, and it wasn't so much that I knew what I needed to do. I just knew what not to do, and I knew that I could see that what everybody else was doing was the wrong thing to be doing. So I over the next 3 years, I learned how to recruit. I learned how to market, how to find our product niche. I had to deal with the operations, the purchasing, everything that you could possibly imagine. I had to learn, and I had to kind of learn in a bad way, really, because we didn't have any customers. No one wanted to deal with us. Suppliers didn't want to supply us. Banks didn't want to fund us. Staff didn't want to come and work for us. And over the 3 years, I took that business from a £300,000 loss to a £30,000 profit. I always say it's not big numbers, but it was just the principle that at 18, 19, 20 years old, I managed to turn that corner and learned every conceivable. Well, I'll rephrase it. I thought I learned every conceivable thing that I could have done at the time. I had more problems to deal with than most business owners would have had in a lifetime, and I had it from the ages of 18 to 21. So I left there because I was, at that point, I felt I'd kind of done my time. It wasn't where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. I was bored. I prefer the cut and thrust of getting something done, of having an idea and executing on it. The entrepreneurial spirit. I'm not a long-term manager, and I knew I wanted to be in leisure. Didn't know why, didn't have anything to qualify me to be in leisure, other than the fact that I like to drink and I love girls. So I decided I was going to open a bar or two, and that's what I did. To varying degrees of success. They ticked over, they weren't amazing. But the reason I learned they weren't amazing was because we couldn't make enough money just from selling alcohol alone. We needed ancillary income, whether that was promoters or DJs or food or whatever it may be. And in my personal life, I used to spend pretty much every night in the strip club at that time, which I decided qualified me to understand the strip club model. And they had what I was missing. They weren't just selling alcohol; they were selling the price of entry. They were taking a commission from the girls. They were taking a commission from the credit card transactions. They were taking a clip every which way you can. And I thought, that is the business for me. This is the income stream I'm missing, and I get to work with naked girls every day. So 24 years old, I sold everything I had, which gave me just about enough money for the deposits on a building and to get the builders going. I begged, stealed, borrowed, did everything possible to get that first club open. And I was 24 when it opened.
Wow.
I think, and we hit the ground running. Listen, it was, I always say, the right place at the right time, but I guess I'm probably just being a little bit too humble about it. Yes, it was the right place at the right time, but also, I had a very clear vision of what we wanted to deliver, and I wanted to take an industry that was very dirty. Excuse the pun. It was typically they were owned by gangsters, who were owned by drug dealers, who were owned by at best a rich guy who wanted to have a plaything, and they were never given serious. They were never treated like a serious business, but I wanted to bring serious business principles into it, and I guess ignore the fact that it was a strip club, and that's what we did. And we marketed it properly. We sold it properly. We treated the staff properly, and that first club was very successful. 6 months later, I had the chance to buy a failing spearmint rhino. You guys in the States, I'm sure you know spearmint rhino. I think spearmint rhino to the US is like Sunday roast to the UK. But I knew the club very well because it was only down the road from my house, and it was failing, and I knew why it was failing. I knew why I could turn it around, and I bought that about 6 months after I opened the first one. And that was really the start of my climb. And for the next 4 or 5 years, I learned how to borrow money, and that was a key thing for my kind of business empire at the time. Because I never had any money. I learned how to borrow, and it was a time of I guess prolific activity in the finance world. I became the biggest strip club operator in the UK. I had a chain of non-strip bars and pubs. I had restaurants, property portfolio, a massive, empire. Ultimately, 8-figure business. Living it large. I was 25, 6, 7, and then in June of 2008, the credit crunch was starting. My lenders were pulling back, and I guess my house of cards built on a bed of sand started to crumble. And one domino fell, they all fell. And within 2 months, 3 months later, all of the businesses were gone, and I was personally bankrupt.
Right. So, do you think it was you grew too fast? Like, where do you think the mistake? Because, listen, it's we can't take all the blame. 2008, tens of millions of people got crushed, if not more, right? It's all the people that are listening. If you don't know what the global financial crisis was in 2008, you can do your own research and learn a little bit more about it. But the lenders started pulling back, like you said, so they weren't giving you access to capital anymore. And everything you had coming in was just paying down debt, I assume. Is that how it all kind of just crumbled from there?
I mean, the problem was twofold. I mean, one, we had very high interest rates that we were paying, and secondly, we had very short capital repayment terms. So we were paying money over 24 months, 36 months, and it's interesting because it's only really over the last 6 months, in particular a few podcasts, where I've been asked, looking back now, what would I have done differently back then to have a different outcome. And I've thought about it long and hard, and ultimately, there wasn't really much I could have done, because the strip club industry was what we call an industry of reputational risk. So your mainstream banks don't want to lend to it. Therefore, I had no choice but to borrow from the niche lenders, the alternative lenders, the guys with higher rates, shorter payback terms. And unfortunately, those terms were just not, they just couldn't be met. So, what you could say is, well, I should have therefore borrowed from bigger banks, or I should have got equity investment. But because that wasn't available, I had no choice. So really, ultimately, the only thing I could have done differently is let's say, planned better, and therefore not entered that business. So I think, fortunately or unfortunately, I just have to accept it was a period in my life where I couldn't have changed the ultimate outcome, but I learned many lessons along the way.
What was the biggest lesson you learned along the way?
The biggest lesson I learned I think I learned how to borrow money, which was ultimately very, very beneficial for where I was going. Because the next chapter of my life was was lending money. So I always say I learned how to be a lender by being a borrower, and I learned how to take security and make sure that we don't fuck up as a lender by watching what happened to me and on what went wrong. There was, I guess, many lessons along the way. I mean, I guess one of the biggest lessons for me from the bankruptcy was that the bankruptcy was not the end. It didn't need to be the end. I had a lot of people around me at the time, professional people, theoretically knowledgeable people, who were all telling me that my life was finished. That basically 27, 28 years old, I'd never be in business again. I'd never have any credibility again. And I obviously didn't listen to these people, but it's funny because, again, I get asked recently, well, what gave you the knowledge to be able to look back at these people and know that you knew better and not listen to what they said and not take their advice? I said, well, honestly, I didn't have any different advice to them. I didn't know better than them. I just thought, I don't like what you're saying. I've got no choice. If I listen to you, then I accept that at 27, 28 years old, I'm finished. Or I don't listen to you. Okay, I don't have a different plan. My plan's to get back to work and make some money. But I had no choice but to not listen to these people and go and try and find my own way.
Listen, I know this was some years ago, but can you bring us back to where your mental health was at that time? Like, you seem very optimistic. You seem very positive. You weren't going to let other people's opinion stop you from chasing your dreams. This is what you enjoy doing, regardless if the money was coming in or not. You were still around beautiful women. You were still around all the things that brought you happiness, right? Networking with people that you like to be around. But what was your mental health like when you filed for bankruptcy and you had no money in the bank and it was time to start all over again?
I mean, I think my mental health was okay. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was obviously stressed, but you know, I mean, I'm not, as much as I will get stressed about things. I do tend to just kind of get my head down and deal with it. You know, I've had ups and downs through my whole career. You know, insofar as I'll have periods of time where I've got money, periods of time where I haven't got money. You know, where I like have flashcards, not have flashcards. And that stuff never really bothered me. I don't really have an ego about it. You know, I can happily drive in a Ferrari. I can drive in a Peugeot. I really don't give a shit. And you know, that's probably because of my ego. Ultimately, you know, I think ultimately I probably think I'm above the Ferraris, above the Rolexes, or above the private jets. Yeah, I love them, but I still probably think I'm probably wrong. But I still think I'm super cool without them. So it never really bothered me. And also, just from a purely practical perspective, at the time I had a 1-year-old daughter. I had a wife, and you know, I had to put food on the table. I had to pay the mortgage. I mean, I think, you know, one thing I've always kind of been clear of, which is a mistake that I always see a lot of other business owners make, is I've never allowed my personal relationships and my businesses to mix, you know, insofar as money. But I always say, look, you know, if you're with me, then you're with me. You know, you can enjoy whatever I've got, but it's my business. You know, don't tell me how to make a fucking business decision, because it was never your business in the first place. So I keep the two things very, very separate. I think, you know, now I'm a lender, now I'm an investor. I see how many other business owners have fucked up on things where, you know, they won't make decisions that they know are right for the business just because their wives won't let them. You know, their wives have said, well, you can't okay, we agree that this business needs another £250,000 investment, but you're not putting that money in because that's money for our house refurb or whatever it is. So, you know, it's never, losing the money's never bothered me because I know I can always make it back, you know, back again. But that doesn't mean I'm not stressed.
Right.
You know,
right.
Of course I get it.
And that's the character trait of a true successful entrepreneur is you can lose it all and you know for a fact you'll get it back. So now it's 2009, right? You have to somewhat pivot. You got to get clear on where you're going from here. Walk us through what happened next.
So I needed to start earning again, and all I had to do at that point, because obviously I burnt my bridges with my lenders, burnt my bridges with investors. So all I really had was whatever skill set I had to monetize, and I'd accidentally become a lender, and I'd become a lender or become a bit of a finance broker because I'd spent so much time borrowing money myself, and I'd got lots of connections with lenders that people didn't know existed. So, you know, in my local area, I was the kind of go-to guy where it was like, you know, other business owners were 50 grand light, 100 grand light on a deal. I was like, oh, let's call Matt because, you know, he knows these weird and wonderful lenders. So, you know, and that's what I did really. I went back one day. Okay, you know, I probably had a week or two of dealing with the mess and answering the questions and handing over the assets. But then it was kind of go to bed, you know, one night, wake up the next day, and get back to work. And I got back to work as a finance broker. That was probably, I would say, 2010, 2011, and you know, and started broking. Ultimately, some of my investors of old reapproached me, and they knew that, you know, yes, I'd lost the money, but I had never done it maliciously. You know, I think, you know, there's a difference between fucking up and setting out to defraud somebody. And they kind of came back on and said, well, you know, we want to back you. What other projects have you got? And that's when I started lending again. So I think we probably first lent money in 2013, 2014. Initially back then, I think my first lender, so my first investor, gave me like 100 grand, which obviously I've got to break that up into lots of little loans. So I think we probably had 20, you know, 5 grand loans, you know, 10 grand loans. Next investor came on maybe with 250 grand. So we could do 10 grand loans and 15 grand loans. And over the years that came, we raised more and more investment money, which just gave us deeper pockets to be able to do bigger deals. And if you look at where we're at now, it's not that the business has wildly changed. It's just that our investors have got deeper pockets, which allow us to do bigger deals. And ultimately, if you do bigger deals, we tend to be more in control than if we're doing smaller deals. When someone wants to borrow 5 or 10 grand, the chances are they're either very desperate or you are a very small piece of a bigger pie. And if it goes wrong, you're going to get hurt. Well, when you're lending, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, the chances are that you can put yourself in a secure and prime position. And that's where we've built ourselves up to over the last kind of 7 or 8 years. And I think where we differ as a lender, where we differ as an investor, is that I always say, as I said earlier, I was a borrower before I was a lender, and I was a business owner before I was a business funder. So we get to approach the businesses with a completely different set of eyes than most of the lenders or than most of the bankers would do, because we've been there, we've suffered those business problems, and I kind of realise, or I understand and appreciate that it's not always just about the money; it's about the support and the advice to go alongside it. A lot of the customers I see, the money won't make anything. If they borrow more money today, all that's going to do is keep them afloat for another 2 or 3 months before they hit another brick wall and need to borrow more money. These guys need support. Some of these businesses just need putting down entirely. But we approach it from a holistic view and give whatever support's necessary as well as looking to fund where we can.
So it really came down to you knew the person that wanted to borrow money and you knew the person that was willing to lend the money. So you were just brokering the deal, kind of like networking. Could you say it was a form of networking? Using your mouthpiece and using your connections to just put 2 people at the same table?
Well, I'd say, in the very beginning, it was broking. So effectively matching the lender with the borrower. As time's gone on, I effectively sit in the middle as the principal. So I've raised investment money on one side and I lend it on the other. But it's me. It's kind of my head on the block and my decisions in the middle. But yes, bring the networking into it. Most of the borrowers and certainly all of the investors come from effectively a permanent commitment and approach to networking.
Yeah, good man. And then so I kind of to pivot a little bit and change the topic. I've been following you on Instagram and I've been watching a lot of the videos that you post on YouTube. You had Tom Skinner on the show. How was that? What was that like?
That was good fun. Did you know Tom? I didn't know Tom before he was booked to come on the podcast. But what a really, really good guy, actually. We had a great conversation, and he's, yes, he's a character, but he's a hard worker. He's got, some very, very fundamental skills and principles that, I guess are kind of universally applicable. And I love to chat with him. Yeah.
Love that, man. So tell us a little bit about the show and the brand that you're working on right now.
So the podcast started by accident, really. I hope you can't. I don't know if you can hear my crying baby in the background. She's just she's walked back through the door. I think she's crying because she's not on camera. This is one of the few podcasts by Zoom I've done where she's not made a guest appearance. She did her first podcast at 2 days old. So here she is.
Oh, there she is.
Say hello.
What's up?
We're talking about networking. What do you think about networking? So the question was, where did the podcast come from?
Podcast. How the podcast came about.
So the podcast started 4 years ago, initially by accident, because I was just looking to create content. I had some smelly Google from 2008. And I was told that basically the best way to get rid of old content was to put new content up. So, and it was, honestly, it was nothing more complicated than that at the beginning. We were doing Instagram, we were doing Twitter, we were doing TikTok back then, but did YouTube. And that's why the podcast started. But then I started to realize that having a podcast gave me a platform, gave me some framing to be able to sit down with people that I wouldn't normally get the chance to sit down with. And that's where we're at really kind of 4 years on now. I mean, I've done, well, I'll tell you, I think we're on 170 audio episodes on iTunes. So we've done more videos. And I say, if no one ever watches it or no one ever listens to it, I really don't care, because what the two main benefits for me in my business are A, that it's got me to sit down with somebody who I wouldn't normally get the chance to sit down with, and B, that when people who are looking to do business with Google me, podcasts come up, and they see me sat down with certain people from a credibility aspect. And, if they see me sat with a member of the British royal family or a CEO or whatever it may be, it gives me that instant credibility. Look, obviously I want people to watch, obviously I want people to listen to it, and they do, and more and more do. But I say to everybody, if I had to give you one single piece of advice, have a podcast, because it gives you so much reach.
I couldn't agree with you more. I started the podcast back in August of 2020. And in the beginning, I just wanted to talk about personal growth, self-development, my Ironman journey, because I run at triathlons and things like that. And as it's been going on and going on and going on, I'm starting to create relationships with some big dogs. And I'm like, okay, just had this guy who wrote a New York Times selling book on the podcast. Now this Ivy League professor wants to talk about consciousness and physiology. And then I'm getting bigger and bigger people on the podcast. I'm landing you on the podcast. It's like, it's such a great platform, because you can have amazing conversations, you can publish the conversations, and you can use it to network. And, as someone who consumes a lot of podcasts as well, I listen to a ton of podcasts. I want to recommend to all those people listening to check out the Matt Haycox Show podcast. And Haycox is spelled Haycox. So Matt, what's on the short-term goal setting plan, agenda, itinerary for you right now? What are you really focused on?
So two things. I am actually focused very, very much on the podcast and personal brand at the moment. I mean, it's always been there in the background, but we've started to put some heavy effort into it. I mean, 3 months ago we launched an online news portal, which has got daily business news, not about me, about business in general. At the minute, it's got particularly UK spin on there, but I guess as our resource grows, then so will that. But we're doing that because I want to build a new audience of people looking to consume business media, which I can then ultimately market other stuff to them. But also, from a personal perspective, I don't like any mainstream media anymore, and the only media I consume is alternative media. So if I can be a piece of that pie in some way, it's something that I think will be profitable in the long term, but also gives me some pleasure. So we're working heavy on that, and then from a business perspective, I'm going to grow by doing less. And one of my big mistakes over the last couple of years has just been taking on more and more and more, and taking it on at a rate that I just can't keep up with in terms of bringing high caliber people on around me. And I've been run ragged trying to, I guess, be in too many places at once, do too many things. We haven't been able to recruit at the pace we can recruit, but we can't recruit quality people at the pace that I wanted to. So I'm making a conscious effort to do nothing new nothing new, certainly for the next 12 months, but just very much grow the team and bed in what we've got. I mean, I've got businesses in so many different sectors. I mean, we have a banking platform, we have a finance business, we have an e-post company, we have a luxury fashion business, we have bars and clubs. So we've got 7 or 8 different very, very diverse sectors in there. Some of those I've got fantastic operating partners on who run them for me, and some of them I haven't. And it's the ones that I haven't that I really need to concentrate on, because I know where my skill sets lay, and that is not running businesses day to day. I'm great at raising money. I'm great at networking. I'm pretty good with the marketing and sprinkling the magic dust on there. But me being day to day having to run a business is not where I want to be. So I'm working hard to find some good people in there.
Good, man. I love it. Well, to all those people out there,
I think she was saying I'm spending a bit of time with her as well. That's what she was saying.
Oh, that's good. Very important. to all those people out there that are listening that want to connect with Matt, you can head over to matt-haycox.com. I'm also going to drop the link to his website, to his daily newsletter, to his Instagram handles, and all his socials so you connect with Matt. Obviously, go ahead and check out the podcast, The Matt Haycox Show. Give it a follow, give it a review. And if you haven't already left a review on this podcast, please do so as well. We recommend 5 stars, but please go ahead and be honest. Matt, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast today, man. Any last words for the listeners out there?
Listen, I guess we talked about networking. We talked about putting the effort in the beginning. I think for me, other quick growth hacks and areas of successful life are partnerships. When I look back at my early 20s, I think one of the mistakes I made was trying to want to own too much on my own. And I very much wanted to be the 100% shareholder, the king of the castle. I've learned the hard way that what's the expression that we can go faster alone, but we can go further together. And I think and any big jumps I've made in my businesses over the last kind of 10 years, I've been partnering up with people. Whether that's because they've got distribution or they've got capital or they've got a skill set. So don't be afraid to give away a piece of the pie. Because it's an old adage, but it's obviously much better to have a bigger piece of a smaller piece of a bigger pie than a bigger piece of a smaller pie. And I think that's probably a mistake I made in my early 20s.
Yeah. Well, actually, one last follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
What type of character traits do you look for in a person before partnering up with them, regardless of their capital or the access to distribution, etc.?
I want people who are hardworking. I want people who are willing to learn. I think that's one of the biggest things for me. I mean, I've got a personal, kind of hatred of the fact that 99% of the people I seem to come across, finish wanting to learn when they leave school. Whilst they finish wanting to learn, they probably never even wanted to learn when they were at school. And for me, they're the kind of key traits that I can back. Obviously, someone's got to have a good idea. But they've got to have the work ethic to work at it, and they've got to have the desire to learn. Whether that's learning from me on the bits that I can bring to the table, or whether it's learning from other mentors or their staff, or going on courses, or whatever it is. They've got to be grown, because ultimately, if I'm backing someone who is a new business, a start of a business, they've got to understand that they don't know anything. Coming with any degree of arrogance is going to hamper their success. And ultimately, I've learned that's what cost me money, because every mistake I've ever made, every big amount of money I've ever lost, it's been lost with another person. And that's obviously my poor character judgment at some point with those people. And finding those right people is A, difficult, but B, just absolutely integral.
Right. And it's those people that have humility and operate from a beginner's mindset, that they can understand and acknowledge, they're aware that they don't know everything.
And honesty as well. It's not an issue to make mistakes. It's a big issue to cover them up. It's also an issue to be making the same mistakes again and again. But we're not learning unless we're making mistakes, unless we try new things. So don't be afraid of it. And don't hide it.
Love it. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Obviously,
Zach, thanks for having us. You got Absolutely. 2 for 1. You got 2 for 1. She doesn't even charge.
2 for 1. I would say clearly you have your hands full right now. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast. It was a pleasure. Again, to all those people out there, go ahead and check out Matt Haycox. I'm going to drop all the links below in the show notes. You guys have a wonderful day. We'll see you guys on the next episode of the Live Better Now podcast.